I'm going to tell you something that might make you angry. It might make you uncomfortable. It might shake the very foundation of everything you've believed about God, about prayer, about manifestation, about the nature of reality itself. For years, decades even, I have taught you that you could manifest anything through imagination. I have stood before audiences and declared that your imagination is the creative power of God. I have written books explaining that consciousness is the only reality. I have given lectures describing how assumption hardens into fact. But there was something I never told you, something I kept hidden because I knew most of you weren't ready to hear it. And that something is this: most of you fail. Not because the law doesn't work, not because you're not worthy, not because you're doing something wrong technically, but because you're whispering to the wrong God. You're praying to a deity outside yourself. You're speaking to a God in the heavens. You're directing your words, your pleas, your desperate petitions to some distant being who sits on a throne beyond the stars, who judges your worthiness, who weighs your prayers against some cosmic scale of merit. You're talking to a God who is separate from you, who is other than you, who must be convinced to grant your requests. And every time you pray this way, every time you beg this external God for what you want, you are confirming the very separation that keeps you powerless. You are affirming that the creative power is out there, not in here. You are declaring that someone else holds the keys to your destiny. You are making yourself small, insignificant, dependent, powerless. But I'm here to tell you something that will shatter this illusion completely. The God you've been praying to, the one you've been waiting to hear from, the one you've been hoping will finally notice you and grant your desires, that God doesn't exist. Not in the way you think, not as some external being separate from you. The true God, the only God, the God who actually creates your reality, is inside you. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally, actually, truly. The creative power that is bringing forth your world moment by moment, that is shaping every circumstance of your life, that is orchestrating every event you experience, is listening to you right now. Not from the heavens, from within you. It is your own consciousness. It is your own awareness. It is your own imagination. And this God within you is not deciding whether or not to answer your prayers. This God is answering you constantly, automatically, perfectly, by creating your world in the exact image of your inner speech, your inner assumptions, your inner convictions about who you are and what is possible for you. When I finally understood this truth, when it penetrated not just my intellect, but my very being, when I stopped begging and started commanding, when I ceased pleading with an external God and began claiming my power as the God within, I watched 1 million enter my life in 30 days. Not through some miraculous intervention from above. Not because the universe finally decided I deserved it. Not because I had accumulated enough good karma or said enough prayers or pleased some distant deity, but because I finally knew who I was. I knew that I am the creative power. I knew that my consciousness is God. I knew that my assumptions about myself must, by the very nature of consciousness itself, materialize in my outer world. And once I knew this, truly knew it not as a concept but as a living reality, manifestation ceased to be a mystery. It became as certain as the law of gravity, as reliable as the rising sun, as inevitable as the harvest that follows the planting of a seed. Let me be absolutely clear with you from the very beginning, because I want no confusion about what I'm about to share with you. This is not a story about luck. This is not a tale about being in the right place at the right time. This is not an account of circumstances miraculously aligning in my favor through some cosmic accident. This is not about positive thinking or wishful hoping or fingers-crossed optimism. This is a revelation, a disclosure, an unveiling of the one law that governs all of creation, the fundamental principle upon which the entire universe operates. The law that you have been using unconsciously, blindly, automatically every single day of your life, every single hour, every single moment, creating both your greatest triumphs and your deepest failures, manifesting both your highest joys and your darkest sorrows, bringing forth both the circumstances you desire and the circumstances you dread. This is the law of assumption. The law that states with absolute certainty and without exception that whatever you assume to be true in consciousness must by its very nature, by the immutable mechanics of reality itself, harden into fact in your outer world. Whatever you are conscious of being, you must become in manifestation. Whatever state you occupy in imagination, you must experience in circumstance. Whatever feeling you sustain in the secret chamber of your mind, you must encounter in the physical world. This is not belief. This is not faith in the religious sense. This is not some mystical hope that maybe possibly if you're lucky things might work out. This is law as certain as mathematics, as reliable as physics, as absolute as the fact that water freezes at 32 degrees or that 2 plus 2 equals 4. You see, most of you have been taught that God is somewhere out there in the heavens beyond the stars, sitting on a throne judging your worthiness, deciding whether or not to grant your prayers. And so you beg, you plead, you negotiate, you make promises, you tell this distant God all the reasons why you deserve what you want, why you need it, why you'll be a better person if only you could have it. And then you wait. You wait for a sign. You wait for a miracle. You wait for the universe to decide that you've suffered enough, that you've proven yourself worthy, that your time has finally come. But I'm here to tell you something that will shatter everything you thought you knew about prayer, about manifestation, about the very nature of God itself. The God you've been praying to, the one you've been waiting to hear from, is not out there at all. God is in you. God is you. Your awareness, your consciousness, your imagination. This is God. And God is not some distant being who may or may not answer your prayers. God is the creative power that is answering you right now in this very moment by creating your world in the exact image of your inner speech, your inner assumptions, your inner convictions about who you are and what is possible for you. Let me take you back to 30 days before 100 million appeared in my life. I was not broke. I was not desperate. But I was curious. I had spent years teaching this law, watching others prove it true, seeing reality bend and reshape itself according to the assumptions people held in consciousness. And yet I wanted to test it in a way that would leave no room for doubt, no room for skepticism, no room for anyone to say it was coincidence or timing or anything other than the law itself at work. So I chose a specific amount, 1 million, not because I needed it, but because it was large enough, specific enough, dramatic enough to prove beyond any shadow of doubt that consciousness truly is the only reality. I gave myself 30 days. I made no new business plans. I reached out to no one. I did not strategize or hustle or scheme. I simply went within. I closed the door to my senses. I shut out the world of appearances. And I began to whisper a sentence to myself, a sentence so simple that your rational mind will want to dismiss it. A sentence so powerful that when sustained with feeling, it has the capacity to rearrange the entire structure of your outer world. That sentence was this: thank God I am wealthy beyond measure. Not I will be wealthy. Not I hope to be wealthy. Not I'm trying to become wealthy. I am wealthy. Present tense. As if it were already true. As though the $1 million had already come. As though I were already the man who never worried about money. Because money flowed to him effortlessly, endlessly, abundantly. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, that sounds too simple. You're thinking there must be more to it than that. You're thinking, surely there were actions I took, strategies I employed, connections I leveraged. But I'm telling you, the only action I took was the action of assumption. I assumed I was wealthy. I persisted in that assumption. And the outer world, being nothing more than a mirror of my inner state, had no choice but to reflect that assumption back to me in the form of 1 million entering my life. But let me tell you why this works. And more importantly, let me tell you why it doesn't work for most of you. You see, when you say the words, I am wealthy, you are not simply mouthing an affirmation, you are not reciting a mantra, you are making a declaration of identity. You are stating who you are in this present moment. And the moment you say, I am, you invoke the name of God. I am is the name of God. It is the self-defin absolute. It is the foundation upon which all creation rests. When Moses asked God what his name was, God said, I am that I am. Not I was not, I will be, I am. Present tense, eternal presence, the ever-present awareness that is the source and substance of all that exists. So when you say, I am wealthy, you are not asking God to make you wealthy. You are declaring that you as God are already wealthy. You are claiming your wealth in consciousness. You are assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and assumption when persisted in must harden into fact. This is not belief, this is law. It is as certain as the law of gravity. It is as reliable as the rising of the sun. If you persist in an assumption, if you sustain the feeling of it, if you live in it until it becomes natural to you, it must by the very nature of consciousness itself manifest in your outer world. But here's where most of you fail. You say the words, but you don't believe them. You affirm, I am wealthy, while inside you're thinking, but my bank account says I'm broke. You declare, I am abundant, while inside you're feeling the lack, the fear, the worry. And so you're not really assuming wealth at all. You're assuming poverty. Because assumption is not about the words you speak. It's about the state you occupy. It's about the consciousness you embody. It's about who you are being in the secret chamber of your own imagination. Let me explain this to you in a way that might help you understand. Imagine for a moment that your life is a mirror. Everything you see in your outer world, every circumstance, every condition, every person, every event is a reflection of your inner world. The mirror doesn't create the image, it simply reflects what is placed before it. So if you stand before the mirror with a frown on your face and you demand that the mirror smile, what happens? Nothing. The mirror cannot smile until you smile. The mirror cannot change until you change. And yet this is what most of you do every single day. You look at your bank account and you demand that it reflect abundance. You look at your relationships and you demand that they reflect love. You look at your circumstances and you demand that they reflect success. But you are still wearing the face of lack, the face of fear, the face of limitation. And so the mirror, faithful and obedient as it is, continues to reflect back to you the very thing you do not want. The secret then is to turn away from the mirror. Stop trying to change the reflection. Instead, change your face. Change who you are being in consciousness. Assume the feeling of wealth, not tomorrow, not when the money comes. Now, right now, in this very moment, feel what it would feel like if you already had the $1 million. Feel the relief. Feel the freedom. Feel the quiet confidence of a man who never worries about money because money is always flowing to him. Embody that state. Live in that state. Persist in that state until it becomes more real to you than the evidence of your senses. And when you do, the mirror will have no choice but to reflect that new face back to you. This is what I did for 30 days. Every morning before I opened my eyes, before I engaged with the world of appearances, I would whisper to myself, "Thank God, I am wealthy beyond measure." And I would feel it. I wouldn't just say the words. I would sink into the feeling of them. I would let them saturate my consciousness. I would imagine what it felt like to be the man who already had the $1 million, not the man hoping for it, not the man trying to get it, the man who already possessed it. And I would carry that feeling with me throughout the day. I would return to it again and again. Whenever doubt crept in, whenever my rational mind screamed at me that I was delusional, that I was ignoring reality, I would gently turn away from those thoughts and return to my assumption. Thank God I am wealthy beyond measure. I am not I will be, I am, and here's what happened. At first, nothing, the outer world looked exactly the same. My bank account hadn't changed. No checks arrived in the mail. No unexpected windfalls appeared. And my rational mind said, "See, this doesn't work. You're wasting your time." But I persisted because I understood something that most of you do not yet understand. The outer world is a delayed mirror. It doesn't reflect your current thoughts. It reflects your sustained assumptions. There is always a gap between the assumption and its manifestation. That gap is called the bridge of incidents. It is the series of events, the chain of circumstances, the unfolding of conditions that must occur in order for your assumption to materialize in the physical world. During this gap, you will be tested. Your faith will be challenged. The outer world will continue to show you the old reality, the reality that corresponds to your former assumptions. And you will be tempted to give up, to say it's not working, to return to your old state of consciousness. But this is precisely the moment when you must persist. This is the moment when your assumption is working beneath the surface, invisible to the outer eye, but active and powerful nonetheless. The seed has been planted. It is growing in the dark. It is sending down roots, drawing nourishment from the soil of consciousness, preparing to break through the surface and manifest in the light of day. By the 7th day of my experiment, something shifted. It wasn't a dramatic shift. It wasn't a lightning bolt moment. It was subtle. I noticed that the feeling of wealth was beginning to feel natural to me. I wasn't forcing it anymore. I wasn't trying to convince myself it had become my dominant state. When I thought about money, I no longer felt anxiety. I felt peace. I felt certainty. I felt as though the $1 million was already mine, as though it had always been mine, as though it was simply a matter of time before the outer world caught up to the inner reality I had created. By the 14th day, I began to notice changes in my inner speech. Inner speech is the silent conversation you have with yourself all day long. It is the stream of thoughts, the automatic sentences, the habitual patterns of thinking that run beneath the surface of your conscious awareness. And I realized that my inner speech had changed. Before, when I would think about money, my inner speech would say things like, "I hope this works out. I need more income. I wonder when things will improve." But now my inner speech was saying, "Money flows to me easily. I am wealthy. I always have more than enough." It was no longer a conscious effort. It had become automatic, and this is the key. This is the moment when you know your assumption has taken root, when the feeling of the wish fulfilled becomes so natural to you that you think from it instead of thinking of it. By the 21st day, the outer world began to shift. An old business contact, someone I hadn't heard from in over a year, reached out to me completely unsolicited. He said he'd been thinking about me, that he had a partnership opportunity he wanted to discuss. We met. He offered me a contract worth $400,000 up front. Now I want you to understand something. This was not magic. This was not luck. This was not the universe rewarding me for being a good person or working hard or having the right connections. This was law, the law of assumption, the law that states that whatever you assume to be true in consciousness must by its very nature manifest in your outer world. I assumed I was wealthy. I persisted in that assumption, and the outer world rearranged itself to match that assumption. It had no choice because consciousness is the only reality. The outer world is not the cause of your experiences. It is the effect. The cause is always within you, in the assumptions you hold, in the states you occupy, in the feeling you embody, in the secret chamber of your imagination. Now let me address something that I know is on your mind. You're wondering if it's this simple. Why doesn't everyone do it? Why are people still struggling, still broke, still trapped in circumstances they don't want? And the answer is this: because they don't understand the nature of assumption. They think assumption means pretending. They think it means ignoring reality. They think it means lying to themselves. But assumption is not pretense. Assumption is a claim of identity. It is a declaration of who you are in this present moment. And most people cannot make that declaration because they are so identified with their current circumstances, so fused with the evidence of their senses that they cannot conceive of themselves as anything other than what they appear to be. Let me give you an example. A man comes to me and says, "I want to be wealthy." And I say, then assume you are wealthy. And he says, but I'm not wealthy, I'm broke. I have debts, I have bills. I can't pay my rent. How can I assume I'm wealthy when the evidence clearly shows I'm poor? And this is the problem. He is judging after appearances. He is letting the outer world dictate his inner state. He is allowing the mirror to tell him what face to wear. But the law works in reverse. You must wear the face of wealth in consciousness first, and then the mirror will reflect that face back to you in the form of outer circumstances. So I tell him the outer world is not the cause, it is the effect. Your poverty is not creating your assumption of poverty. Your assumption of poverty is creating your poverty. You are poor because you are conscious of being poor. You think thoughts of lack. You speak words of limitation. You feel the feeling of not having enough, and consciousness, being the only reality, must objectify that inner state in the form of an outer world that matches it. So if you want to change your outer world, you must first change your inner world. You must stop assuming you are poor and start assuming you are rich. Not when the money comes now, right now. In the face of all evidence to the contrary, you must claim your wealth in consciousness before you see it in your bank account. And he says, but that's so hard. How can I feel wealthy when I'm surrounded by poverty? How can I assume abundance when lack is staring me in the face? And I say, this is the test. This is the crucible. This is where your faith is forged. Can you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled even when the outer world denies it? Can you persist in your assumption even when everything around you is screaming that you're wrong, that you're delusional, that you're ignoring reality? Because this is what separates those who manifest their desires from those who remain trapped in their circumstances. The ability to persist in the assumption of the wish fulfilled regardless of appearances. You see, most people give their power away to the outer world. They let circumstances dictate how they feel. They let other people's opinions determine what they believe about themselves. They let the evidence of their senses override the claims of their imagination. And so they remain slaves to their current reality, victims of their conditions, beggars waiting for life to give them what they want. But I'm telling you, you are not a beggar. You are a king. You are God in human form. You are the creative power that is authoring the story of your life. And the moment you realize this, the moment you accept this, the moment you begin to live from this truth, everything changes. Let me tell you about a man who came to me years ago. He was drowning in debt, 80,000 deep creditors calling every day, his wife losing faith in him, his children looking at him with disappointment in their eyes. He asked me what he should do, and I told him something that made him angry. I said, you must die, not physically, but the man who is 80,000 in debt must die. You cannot drag him into wealth. You must bury him and resurrect a new man. A man who has never known debt. A man who, when he imagines his bank account, feels abundance. A man who walks differently, speaks differently, thinks differently because in his inner world the debt never existed. He resisted at first. He said, but that's not realistic. The debt is real. The creditors are real. They were sending her a check for 11,000. She called me, her voice trembling with disbelief. And she said, is this real? Did I really do this? And I said, you did. You assumed you were wealthy. You persisted in that assumption, and the outer world delivered to you exactly what you claimed in consciousness. The company, the error, the check, these were all bridges. They were the means by which your assumption manifested. But the cause was not the company. The cause was your consciousness. Now let me tell you what I learned from my own experiment. The 7 words I whispered every day for 30 days. Thank God I am wealthy beyond measure. Let me break this down for you because every word matters. You must become aware of what you're saying to yourself. You must catch yourself in the act of affirming lack and consciously replace it with an affirmation of abundance. And you must do this consistently, persistently, until the new inner speech becomes natural, until it becomes your default mode of thinking, until it becomes the habitual state of your consciousness. Now, let me tell you about living in the end. This is perhaps the most misunderstood concept in all of my teaching. People hear the phrase living in the end and they think it means visualizing the goal. They think it means imagining the final outcome. But that's not what it means. Living in the end means occupying the state of consciousness that you would occupy if your desire were already fulfilled. It means thinking from the wish fulfilled rather than thinking of the wish fulfilled. It means being the person who already has what you want rather than being the person who is trying to get what you want. Let me give you an example. If you want to manifest 1 million, most of you will imagine receiving the $1 million. You'll visualize a check in the mail. You'll picture money in your bank account. You'll see yourself celebrating. And all of this is thinking of the end. You're imagining the moment of fulfillment, but you're not living in the end. Because the person who is imagining receiving $1 million is still the person who doesn't have $1 million. He's still looking at the $1 million from the outside. He's still separated from it. Living in the end means something different. It means imagining yourself after the $1 million has come. It means occupying the state of consciousness of a millionaire. It means thinking the thoughts a millionaire thinks, feeling the feelings a millionaire feels, speaking the words a millionaire speak. It means no longer needing the $1 million because in your consciousness you already have it. The anxiety is gone, the striving is gone, the desperation is gone. All that remains is peace, confidence, freedom. This is living in the end, and this is the state you must occupy if you want your desire to manifest. When I did my 30-day experiment, I didn't spend my time visualizing receiving the $1 million. I spent my time being the man who already had the $1 million. I would lie in bed at night and feel what it felt like to be financially free. Not what it would feel like, what it felt like. Present tense, as if it were already true. I would imagine lying there with no financial worries, no stress about bills, no anxiety about the future, just peace, deep abiding peace. And I would fall asleep in that state. I would let that feeling saturate my consciousness as I drifted off to sleep. Because the state you occupy as you fall asleep is the state that impresses itself most deeply upon your subconscious mind. And here's what I discovered. When you live in the end, when you truly occupy the state of the wish fulfilled, something miraculous happens. You stop trying, you stop striving. You stop worrying about the how and the when and the where, because in your consciousness it's already done. The wish is already fulfilled. There's nothing left to do. All that remains is to persist in that state, to return to it again and again until the outer world catches up and delivers to you in physical form what you have already claimed in consciousness. This is the secret that most manifestation teachings miss. They tell you to visualize, they tell you to affirm. They tell you to feel good, but they don't tell you to die. They don't tell you to let go of the old self, the old identity, the old state of consciousness. They don't tell you that manifestation is not about adding something to yourself, but about becoming someone new. Someone who already has what you want, someone who already is what you want to be. Let me tell you about the bridge of incidence. This is the gap between your assumption and its manifestation. This is the period of time when your assumption is working beneath the surface, invisible to the outer eye, but active and powerful nonetheless. And this is where most people fail, because during this gap, the outer world continues to show you the old reality. Your bank account still looks the same. Your circumstances haven't changed. And your rational mind says, see, this doesn't work. You're wasting your time. You're being delusional. But I'm telling you, this is precisely the moment when you must persist. This is the moment when your faith is being tested. This is the moment when you prove to yourself that you truly believe consciousness is the only reality. Because if you give up now, if you let the appearance of things cause you to waver in your assumption, then you've abandoned your new state and returned to your old state. And the outer world, being a faithful mirror, will continue to reflect your old state back to you. But if you persist, if you hold fast to your assumption, if you refuse to let the evidence of your senses dictate your inner state, then the bridge of incidents will unfold. Events will begin to occur. Circumstances will begin to shift. People will begin to show up. Opportunities will begin to appear. And all of these things will seem random, coincidental, unrelated to your assumption. But they're not. They're all bridges. They're all stepping stones. They're all part of the chain of events that must occur in order for your assumption to manifest in the physical world. The man who manifested 90,000 to pay his debt, the uncle's call was a bridge. The woman who manifested 11,000, the company's accounting error was a bridge. When I manifested 100 million, the business contact's call, the investment payout, the new clients, all of these were bridges. I didn't create any of them through my own efforts. I didn't orchestrate any of them through my own planning. They simply appeared. They unfolded naturally. They materialized out of the void because consciousness is the only reality. And when you assume a new state in consciousness, the outer world must rearrange itself to match that state. It has no choice. This is law. Now, let me tell you about doubt. Doubt is the enemy of manifestation. Doubt is the wobbling between two states. Doubt is the moment when you question whether your assumption is true, whether this law really works, whether you're wasting your time. And doubt is natural. It's human. It's to be expected because you've spent your entire life believing that the outer world is the cause and your consciousness is the effect. You've been trained to judge after appearances, to let circumstances dictate how you feel, to wait for evidence before you believe. But I'm asking you to reverse that. I'm asking you to believe before you see. I'm asking you to assume the wish fulfilled before the outer world confirms it. I'm asking you to have faith in consciousness as the only reality. And this requires a leap of faith, a leap into the unknown, a leap away from the security of the visible world into the uncertainty of the invisible world. But this leap is not uncertainty. It's the most certain thing you'll ever do. Because consciousness is more real than the physical world. Imagination is more real than the senses. The inner world is the cause. The outer world is the effect. So when doubt comes, and it will come, don't fight it, don't resist it, don't make it wrong. Simply acknowledge it. Say, I see you, doubt. I know you're here, but I'm not listening to you because I know who I am. I know that I am God. I know that my consciousness is the only creative power. I know that my assumption must harden into fact. And then gently, lovingly return to your assumption. Return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Return to the state of consciousness you've chosen to occupy and persist. Persistence is everything. This is the quality that separates those who manifest their desires from those who remain trapped in their circumstances. The ability to persist in an assumption regardless of appearances. The ability to hold fast to a state regardless of evidence. The ability to remain faithful to a feeling regardless of doubt. This is the mark of a master. This is the signature of one who knows the law and knows how to use it. Let me tell you about revision. This is a technique I teach that most people don't fully understand. Revision is the act of going back into your past and rewriting events as you wish they had occurred. Now, some people say, but the past is over. It's done. It's fixed. How can I change what's already happened? And I say, this isn't working. And in those moments I would revise. I would go back in my imagination to the moment I checked my bank account, and I would replay it differently. I would imagine seeing 1 million in my account. I would feel the joy, the relief, the gratitude, and I would let that revised memory replace the original one. And by doing so, I kept my consciousness aligned with my assumption. I kept myself in the state of wealth. I refused to let the appearance of lack pull me out of the state I had chosen to occupy. Revision is a powerful tool. Use it. Use it whenever you have an experience that contradicts your assumption. Use it whenever you catch yourself feeling the old state. Use it to keep yourself anchored in the new state. Because the state you occupy is the state you will manifest. And if you allow the old state to creep back in, if you allow the old feelings to take hold, then you will continue to manifest the old reality. But if you persist in the new state, if you revise any experience that contradicts it, if you refuse to give your attention to anything that doesn't match it, then the new state will harden into fact and your outer world will reflect it back to you. Now, let me tell you about the feeling of the wish fulfilled. This is the most important part of the entire process. This is the key that unlocks the door. This is the secret that makes everything work. The feeling, not the thought, not the image, not the affirmation, the feeling. Because consciousness is not intellectual. Consciousness is emotional. Consciousness is felt. And the state you occupy is determined not by what you think, but by what you feel. You can say, I am wealthy 1,000 times a day. But if you don't feel wealthy, then you're not occupying the state of wealth. You're occupying the state of trying to be wealthy. And trying is lack. Trying is separation. Trying is the consciousness of not having. So the words alone are not enough. The visualization alone is not enough. You must feel the feeling. You must embody the emotion. You must sink into the consciousness of the wish fulfilled. And here's the beautiful thing. When you truly feel the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you stop caring about the outer world. You stop checking your bank account every 5 minutes. You stop looking for signs. You stop asking when it will happen. Because in your consciousness, it's already happened. The wish is already fulfilled. There's nothing left to do. All that remains is to enjoy the feeling, to savor it, to bask in it, to let it saturate every cell of your being. This is the state I occupied for 30 days. I felt wealthy, not excited, not hopeful, not anxious, wealthy, calm, peaceful, free. And that feeling became my reality. It became my dominant state. It became the lens through which I viewed everything. And because consciousness is the only reality, the outer world had no choice but to conform to that inner feeling. The $1 million came because I already felt like a millionaire. The opportunities appeared because I was already occupying the state of abundance. The circumstances aligned because I was already being the man who had what I wanted. So if you take nothing else from this, take this. Feel the feeling. Don't just think about it. Don't just visualize it. Don't just affirm it. Feel it. Sink into it. Let it consume you. Let it become your reality. And persist in that feeling until the outer world catches up. This is the secret. This is the law. This is the way. Let me tell you about the relationship between consciousness and circumstance. Most people believe that circumstances create consciousness. They believe that if their circumstances were better, they would feel better. They believe that if they had more money, they would feel abundant. They believe that if they had a better relationship, they would feel loved. They believe that if they had a better job, they would feel successful. And so they spend their entire lives trying to change their circumstances, hoping that when the circumstances change, their consciousness will change. But this is backwards. Persist until it becomes effortless. Persist until it becomes who you are. And then watch as the outer world rearranges itself to match your inner state. Let me tell you about the power of the present moment. Most of you are living in the future. You're waiting for something to happen. You're waiting for the right time, the right circumstance, the right opportunity. You're saying, when I get the money, then I'll feel abundant. When I meet the right person, then I'll feel loved. When I achieve my goal, then I'll feel successful. But this is the trap, because by waiting for the future, you're affirming that you don't have it now. And if you don't have it now in consciousness, then you won't have it later in manifestation, because consciousness is the only reality. And whatever you are conscious of being now, that is what you will manifest. So the secret is to claim your desire now, not in the future. Now, in this very moment, feel what you would feel if your desire were already fulfilled. Be who you would be if your goal were already achieved. Occupy the state you would occupy if your wish were already granted. And do this now, not tomorrow, not when conditions are right, not when you feel ready now. Because the present moment is the only moment in which creation occurs. The present moment is the only moment in which consciousness operates. It is the stream of thoughts, the silent sentences, the automatic conversations that run through your mind all day long. And this inner speech is creative. It is not neutral. It is not passive. It is actively creating your reality. Every thought you think, every word you speak to yourself is a command given to your subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind, being impersonal and obedient, must execute that command. It must bring forth circumstances that match the nature of your inner speech. So if your inner speech is negative, if you're constantly thinking thoughts of lack, limitation, fear, worry, then you are commanding your subconscious to create a reality of lack, limitation, fear, worry. But if your inner speech is positive, if you're constantly thinking thoughts of abundance, freedom, love, joy, then you are commanding your subconscious to create a reality of abundance, freedom, love, joy. Your subconscious doesn't judge your thoughts. It doesn't question them. It doesn't evaluate whether they're good or bad, true or false, helpful or harmful. It simply takes them as orders and executes them. It brings forth in your outer world exactly what you've been affirming in your inner world. So, watch your inner speech. Observe what you're saying to yourself. Notice the automatic sentences that run through your mind. Catch yourself in the act of affirming what you don't want. And when you do, stop, pause, and replace that negative inner speech with positive inner speech. Replace the thought of lack with the thought of abundance. Replace the feeling of fear with the feeling of peace. Replace the assumption of limitation with the assumption of freedom. And do this consistently. Do this persistently. Do this until the new inner speech becomes natural. Until it becomes automatic, until it becomes your habitual mode of thinking. This is how you reprogram your subconscious. This is how you change your default state of consciousness. This is how you transform your reality from the inside out. Because reality is not something external that happens to you. Reality is something internal that you create. And you create it through your inner speech, through your assumptions, through the states you occupy in consciousness. Let me tell you about the 7-word sentence I used. Thank God I am wealthy beyond measure. I chose this sentence very carefully. Every word was intentional. Thank God, gratitude, acknowledgement. Assumption that what I desire has already been given. I am present tense, identity. These are the two most powerful times for impressing your subconscious with the assumption of the wish fulfilled. In the morning, before you open your eyes, before you engage with the world of appearances, lie in bed and enter into your imagination. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Speak your sentence. Feel it, let it saturate your consciousness, and then open your eyes and carry that feeling with you throughout the day. Don't let the outer world pull you out of that state. Don't let circumstances dictate how you feel. Stay anchored in the consciousness of the wish fulfilled. No matter what you see, no matter what you hear, no matter what you experience, at night before you fall asleep, do the same. Lie in bed and enter into your imagination. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Speak your sentence. Feel it and fall asleep in that feeling. Let it be the last thing on your mind as you drift off to sleep. Because the state you occupy as you fall asleep impresses itself most deeply upon your subconscious. It becomes the seed that grows in the dark beneath the surface and manifests in the light of day. And throughout the day, practice thought substitution. Whenever you catch yourself thinking a thought that contradicts your assumption, stop, pause, and replace the thought with a thought that matches your assumption. If you catch yourself thinking, I can't afford this, replace it with, money flows to me easily. If you catch yourself thinking, I'll never have enough, replace it with, I always have more than enough. If you catch yourself thinking, this isn't working, replace it with, my assumption is manifesting now. Do this every time. Do this without exception. Do this until the new thoughts become automatic, until the new state becomes natural, until the new consciousness becomes your reality. Now let me address something that's probably on your mind. You're wondering, how long will it take? When will I see results? How do I know if it's working? And I understand these questions, I really do. Because you've been conditioned to expect instant gratification, immediate results, quick fixes. But consciousness doesn't work on a schedule. Manifestation doesn't follow a timeline. The bridge of incidents unfolds according to its own rhythm, its own logic, its own perfect timing. For me, it took 30 days, but for you, it might take less, it might take more. It depends on how deeply rooted your old assumptions are. It depends on how consistently you persist in your new assumption. It depends on how much resistance you have to letting go of the old state and embracing the new state. But here's what I can tell you with absolute certainty. If you persist, it will manifest. There is no question. There is no doubt. It is not a matter of if. It is only a matter of when. Because consciousness is the only reality and assumption when persisted in must harden into fact. This is law. Manifestation is not a technique you try. It's a state you become. It's not something you do. It's something you are. And becoming requires time. Becoming requires persistence. Becoming requires that you die to the old self and resurrect as the new self. And most people are not willing to die.